Greetings. I came across the article titled 50 VA Hospital Workers Claim Retaliation for Blowing the Whistle on Horrors They Saw. And one of them was Valerie Riviello, nurse manager of the Albany Stratton VA Medical Center. A quick summary. When Valerie Riviello, a nurse at the Albany VA Stratton Medical Center in New York, saw the clinic restrain a sexual assault survivor to a bed for 7 consecutive hours, she released the woman. The next day, Mrs. Riviello said she was removed from her post as senior nurse manager and given a full-time desk job that prohibited her from contact with patients. She eventually was reprimanded and is facing a 30-day unpaid suspension for releasing the woman. Now, Mrs. Riviello is one of more than 50 whistleblowers to say the Veteran Affairs Department retaliated against them for trying to do their jobs. And I want again to bring to your attention that this nurse was the nurse managers who blew the whistle at the Albany Stratton VA Medical Center. And I pointed out that it was under investigation when my late husband was very much mistreated. The story is recorded on my channel. And this brought me to find something very sad, and I will read it. Chris Kirkpatrick, a Department of Veteran Affairs psychologist and whistleblower, committed suicide in 2009. Let's go check the article. I'll get it. The article is titled "For One Whistleblower, Getting Fired Was Too Much." We're talking about Christopher Kirkpatrick, and even though this article was written 2 years ago, I think it is very much, and even though they made a law about this, about protecting the whistleblowers, I saw too much at the Albany VA Stratton Medical Center to not read this article publicly. Tomah, Wisconsin. He left a note for the mailman. Please call 911. Tell them to go to Red Barn Building. There, officers found the body of Christopher Kirkpatrick, a 38-year-old clinical psychologist who had shot himself in the head after being fired from the Tomah Veterans Affairs Medical Center. Kirkpatrick had complained some of his patients were too drugged to treat properly, but like other whistleblowers at the facility, he was ousted and his concerns of wrongdoing were disregarded. Retaliation against whistleblowers has become a major problem at VA facilities across the country. The U.S. Office of Special Counsel is investigating 110 retaliation claims from whistleblowers in 38 states and the District of Columbia. And I want again to point to your attention that Valerie Riviello, a nurse at the Veteran Affairs facility in New York, which is the Albany VA Stratton Medical Center, where my late husband was extremely mistreated, was being punished for doing her job. Continuing to read the article. After Bud McDonald took over as Secretary of Department of Veteran Affairs last year, the agency created a special office to investigate whistleblower claims and retaliation, but VA officials concede more needs to be done to prevent retaliation and embrace criticism that can improve veteran care. The Kirkpatrick family wants that to happen sooner rather than later. His relatives are speaking publicly for the first time about what happened to him to try to pressure the agency to do more to protect whistleblowers. The following account is drawn from police records, personal meeting notes, interviews with family members, and documents preserved by the family and provided to USA Today. Another reason why I'm reading this article is because it is not easy to find on the internet. So before it will disappear, I want to have archives of it. What happened to Chris is outrageous, Brother Sean Kirkpatrick said. My hope and my family's hope is that people will take action so this does not happen to anyone else. Just a little comment here. You know, when the Department of Veteran Affairs are making statements such as, and I quote, sick vets should kill themselves. So they have very few consideration for the veterans, and because of that, I think that there will be more whistleblowers. In other words, to create a law to protect whistleblowers is not enough. The whole system is corrupted since the Department of Veterans Affairs themselves said, and I quote, sick vets should kill themselves. And I will put the video as a cord to this one. Continuing to read. What happened? Okay. A heady summit. It was his first job out of school. Christopher Kirkpatrick had earned a doctorate in clinical psychology in August 2008, and he landed at the Tomo VA for a month later. It was to be a 2-year appointment. During that time, he would need to pass exams and secure a license to practice. Then the appointment could become permanent. The appointment, he had done an internship at the VA facility in Chicago and trained in treating post-traumatic stress disorder substance abuse, and chronic pain. Quote, I am especially interested in the use of innovative treatments for PTSD, he wrote in a letter at the time. He had started a yoga program to help vets at the Chicago VA. He seemed a perfect fit for TOMA, which provides residential and outpatient treatment for veterans with PTSD, acute mental illnesses, and substance abuse issues. Moving from Chicago to rural south central Wisconsin was an adjustment. A girlfriend he was dating remained in Chicago, but for Kirkpatrick the job was worth it. Quote, this was basically the first place where he was able to practice, and he was extremely excited about this, his brother recalled. The work was tough and stressful, and he still had much to learn. During this 90-day performance in review, a supervisor cautioned that he had been late for group counseling sessions and that had to stop. Kirkpatrick later said he had to learn how to cut off appointments with other patients to be on time for groups, according to detailed notes taken by a union representative who heard him. I would be coming at a point in psychotherapy where a traumatized patient was opening up, and I couldn't break off the session until after processing, he said, according to the notes. But Kirkpatrick, whom patients and colleagues affectionately called Dr. K, soon figured out how to cut off sessions. Some of the other things he was discovering, though, were troublesome. He told his brother some of his patients appeared to be overly medicated by other healthcare providers at TOMA, and it was preventing him from treating them. It also went against the alternative approach to treatment he preferred. In early 2009, Kirkpatrick brought up the issue at a meeting about patient care with a team of providers. Instead of considering or addressing the concerns, a physician assistant who was at the meeting and had prescribed medications to some of Kirkpatrick's patients complained to the facility chief of staff, Dr. David Houlihan. In April 2009, Kirkpatrick was called to a disciplinary meeting and given a written reprimand. Quote, Dr. Kirkpatrick was cautioned about engaging in any further criticism of the PA, advised to focus on his own work, and counseled that he should avoid advising on medications as it is not in the scope of practice, the reprimand stated. Afterward, a union representative who had represented him at the meeting said in an email to Kirkpatrick the punishment shouldn't have happened, but she advised him to stick it out. Quote, try to carry on in your per usual professional manner and know this, Chris. There is a lot going on here, wrote Lynn Ellingwissen, head of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 0007, who wrote detailed notes about every encounter she had with Kirkpatrick. Quote, unfortunate but true. There are employees who are suffering a great deal worse, and I don't want you to join their ranks. End of the quote. A few weeks later, Kirkpatrick wrote a letter to his supervisor stating he and several colleagues had noticed problems with patients' medications, but he didn't intend to pursue the issue. In an email to Ellingwissen, he suggested he had been scared silent. Quote, I'm still really concerned about things, but will keep my head down and hope for the best. End of the quote, he wrote. A VA investigation triggered earlier this year, we're talking in 2015, by the revelation that a veteran died at Toma last August from mixed drug toxicity, found Kirkpatrick's concerns as being warranted. Toma veterans were 2.5 times more likely to get high doses of opiates than the national average, and they were almost twice as likely to get them in dangerous combinations with other drugs. The probe found between commas unsafe clinic practices that led to patient harm. But those findings came much too late to save Kirkpatrick. An uphill climb. Kirkpatrick was the second of six children of a school teacher and businessman who raised them in Illinois and Colorado. He spent a lot of time babysitting his siblings. He had an affinity for animals and counted among his childhood pet dogs, cats, guinea pigs, birds, reptiles, and a skunk. A caretaking role has always felt natural to me, he wrote in a VA application essay. His life was not a glide path to success, though. A friend's suicide traumatized him when he was a teenager. He dropped out of high school. He smoked and drank too much. But he managed to quickly pull himself together. His siblings don't know how or why. He stopped drinking and earned a GED, a Bachelor of Science in Clinical Psychology at Northwestern University, and a doctorate at the Adler School of Professional Psychology in Ohio. He was extremely driven, his older sister, Katie Kirkpatrick, said. He was a champion kickboxer in his 20s and studied and taught the combat sport Muay Thai. He loved to read and was drawn to the writings of philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche and psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. He was quick-witted, the kind of person who can read something complicated and regurgitate the information to you in a way that was just, it would take you aback, between commas, his brother recalled. While he was in school, he worked with at-risk youth in Chicago, with inmates at a correctional center, with preschool children and juvenile delinquents. He also researched public housing residents displaced from the city's Cabrini Green Project. Quote, experiences have taught me to be grateful for being able to choose my own professional path, he wrote in a VA application. Quote, in reflecting on my life and finding myself closer to finally realizing my goal of becoming a clinical psychologist, I am confident that I have chosen a path with heart, grateful that I have the ability to pursue a career that I find interesting and rewarding. End of the quote. One of his supervisors during his internship at the Chicago VA gave him a glowing reference. Quote, Mr. Kirkpatrick was my highest recommendation. VA clinical psychologist Sheila Perrin wrote. Quote, Dr. Kirkpatrick is appreciated and liked very much by vets plus staff, all of whom wanted to hire him. It was one of many positive recommendations he received before he started in Toma the fall. In July 2009, 3 months after Toma, VA officials disciplined him for criticizing medication practices, Kirkpatrick landed in hot water again, according to Ellen Winston's notes. Kirkpatrick had reported that one of his veteran patients had threatened to harm him and his dog. A treatment team decided the patient should be discharged, but he never was. Kirkpatrick wrote about what happened in the patient's record. He was disturbed and took the next 2 work days off, Friday and Monday. The following morning he was summoned to another disciplinary meeting. This time he was fired. Management said he left an hour early one day, logged a 90-minute sleep incorrectly, and took vacation and sick leave disproportionately on Mondays and Fridays. In addition, when he was permitted to bring his dog to work one day, the dog, quote, went to the bathroom and someone other than Dr. K cleaned it up, end of the quote. Ellen Winston wrote in her notes from the meeting. Kirkpatrick was devastated and pleaded for another chance. I've been in a bad way. I have been taking a few days off fossil preservation. I told you that I should not be taking on so many complex cases, that I needed help. End of the quote. He said, according to the meeting notes, quote, I don't have the emotional resources to cope with this stress. End of the quote. He said he had been waking up at night anxious about patients. Toward the end of the meeting, when it became clear the decision was final, he said, quote, you're killing me. Quote, I have gave up everything to come here. My girlfriend, my family, everything, he said. This will devastate me. End of the quote. And he said he believed he was being retaliated against because he had written in the patient's medical record that the facility had failed to discharge the threatening veteran. Ellen Winston believes the reasons got back further to his criticism of medication practices. She thinks that put him on the radar as someone who would challenge management about treatment provided at the center. Is charting the failure to discharge a potentially dangerous patient was another example of that. And he walked with Ellen Winston to his office to gather his belongings. He told her he was $185,000 in debt and worried about what he was going to do. Lynn, will you try to do something for me? He asked before leaving that day, according to her notes. Quote, try to get a support system so that no one else has to go through what I did. Will you please do that? End of the quote. She said she would. When he got home, evidence suggests he looked online to see what dose of diazepam, anti-anxiety medication that had been prescribed to him, would kill him. The website he found provided no sure lethal dose. He emailed his girlfriend in Chicago. Quote, I will always love you dearly, he wrote. She replied, I love you too. But he would never see the reply. He wrote the note for the mailman, took it to the mailbox near the road, and put the flag up. He put another on the door of the Redbourne building where he lived, providing contact information for a kennel he wanted to take care of his dog Kelly. Then he sat in his living room, put a 9mm semi-automatic pistol under his chin, barreled toward his brain, and fired a single shot. The wreckage. When police found him, he was slumped over in a pool of blood on the couch, the gun still in his right hand, which rested limp between his knees. Police also found marijuana, the anti-anxiety medication that had been prescribed to him, psychedelic mushrooms and another hallucinogenic substance, but drug use appears to have had nothing to do with what happened to him at the Toma VA. Ellingwinson said it was never raised as an issue. His family is now contemplating filing a whistleblower case on his behalf. His siblings want his personal record and name cleared. They didn't learn the details of his work problems until earlier this year, when another Toma whistleblower who had heard about the struggles contacted them and put them in touch with Ellingwinson. It is devastating to hear about all of this from Lynn only this year, Sister Kathy Kirkpatrick said. The family said one of the most unsettling revelations was that Kirkpatrick had a right to appeal his firing under the Whistleblower Protection Act, but he wasn't informed of that option. It was not included in his termination notice, and Ellingwinson said it did not come up at the meeting. I'm convinced that if he knew he had the right to appeal the Toma VA's decision to fire him for the reasons they cited, that he would be still here today, Sean Kirkpatrick said. Chris had sacrificed everything to be there, and he knew that he was being dismissed for retaliatory reasons. Had he known he had a way to fight back, he most certainly would have. VA officials said since Kirkpatrick's death, the agency has implemented online whistleblower training, etc. I'm less interested to read this. I will put the link in the video description, but for the reason that I don't believe in the VA system, and I already told you why, so no need for me to consider what is written about the VA officials and the bill pending in Congress, etc., etc., etc. So this was, for one whistleblower, getting fired was too much. I will put the link in the video description. It was published by USA Today. Thank you for listening. A note for the mailman. Please call 911. Tell them to go to Redbourne Building. There, officers found the body of Christopher Kirkpatrick, a 38-year-old clinical psychologist who had shot himself in the head after being fired from the Toma Veterans Affairs Medical Center. Kirkpatrick had complained some of his patients were too drugged to treat properly, but like other whistleblowers at the facility, he was ousted and his concerns of wrongdoing were disregarded. Retaliation against whistleblowers has become a major problem at VA facilities across the country. The U.S. Office of Special Counsel is investigating 110 retaliation claims from psychologists and whistleblowers committed suicide in 2009. Let's go check the article. The article is titled "For One Whistleblower, Getting Fired Was Too Much." We're talking about Christopher Kirkpatrick, and even though this article was written 2 years ago, I think it is very much, and even though they made a law about this, about protecting the whistleblowers, I saw too much at the Albany VA Stratton Medical Center to not read this article publicly. Toma, Wisconsin. He left her to a bed for 7 consecutive hours, she released the woman. The next day, Mrs. Riviero said she was removed from her post as senior nurse manager and given a full-time desk job that prohibited her from contact with patients. She eventually was reprimanded and is facing a 30-day unpaid suspension for releasing the woman. Now, Mrs. Riviero is one of more than 50 whistleblowers to say the Veteran Affairs Department retaliated against them for trying to do their jobs. And I want again to bring to your attention that this nurse was the nurse managers who blew the whistle at the Albany Stratton VA Medical Center. And I pointed out that it was under investigation when my late husband was very much mistreated. The story is recorded on my channel. And this brought me to find something very sad, and I will read it. Chris Kirkpatrick, a Department of Veteran Affairs. Greetings, I came across the article titled 50 VA Hospital Workers Claim Retaliation for Blowing the whistle on horrors they saw. And one of them was Valerie Riviero, nurse manager of the Albany Stratton VA Medical Center. A quick summary. When Valerie Riviero, a nurse at the Albany VA Stratton Medical Center in New York, saw the clinic restrain a sexual assault survivor